This episode is brought to you by Radio.co, and I'm happy to announce that I'm here with Phil today. Phil, why don't you tell me about Radio.co? You know everything there is to know about Radio.co.
What is Radio.co is a very, very good question. So it is an entirely cloud-based platform that gives you all the tools, all the support, all the knowledge, all the encouragement to create your very own global internet radio station that all you need is just your own computer and internet connection, and you're ready to literally rock and roll. If you're interested in it, head to our website, radio.co, and you can activate a free trial and see how you find running your own radio station. Spoiler alert, it's a lot easier than you may initially think.
Sounds incredible. I'm going to do it right now. Hello and welcome back to the Audio Insider podcast. Today I'm joined by Phil Dean. Hello, Phil.
Hello, Rowan Walsh. How are you doing?
Yeah, full names. Feel a bit weird. I don't know why I said Phil Dean. Phil Dean. Hello, nice to see you. So Phil is here from Radio.co today to talk to us a bit about the radio scene and more specifically how podcasts and radio are kind of working together these days rather than opposing each other, which is kind of like the common belief, isn't it? That they're sort of against each other in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of, my role within Radio.co is to help people understand how easy it can be to at least launch your own internet radio station. So using our Radio.co platform, giving them a bit of guidance, strategy, and marketing, everything like that. But one of the most important questions and most popular questions people ask is, I don't know whether I want to do a podcast or a radio station, or which one should I do? And often my response is, well, it's a case of which one do you want to do first?
Yeah.
They do massively work hand in hand. And again, the main crux of this discussion that we're going to have today is how, despite how gargantuan podcasting is in popularity, it's really not competing against radio. There's no threat there, but they can both thrive and do thrive very well, separately. So that's kind of the main discussion really of why you should really do both.
Absolutely, yeah. Look forward to talking about it. We'll also be talking about Will.i.am, or Will.i.am, as his friends call him.
He is.
Will, there he goes. He's done a new thing, isn't he, Phil? He's done an AI thing.
Yeah.
That we'll be talking about. What's it called? It's called Radio. .fyi.
It's a lot of letters.
Yes,
a lot of nonsense,
a lot of letters.
And we're going to jump into it.
But let's get straight onto the main crux of today, which is why we think you should look at starting a podcast and a radio show and not just picking one or the other, because they definitely benefit each other, don't they, Phil?
Yeah, I guess the main direction of, which one do you want to do first, or what's going to be arguably the main focus, sometimes can just be as simple as deciding, well, is the program you want to do based around music, or is it talk-based? If it's going to be talk-based, then it doesn't really matter which one you want to do first. Comes down to a preference of whether you want to do it live or as live or on demand. But if it's music, absolutely, radio is the right format for that.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess something I've noticed here is that platforms like the big stations like BBC Radio 1, for instance, they've got a breakfast show hosted by Greg James, and they've actually started uploading the show that they do in the morning to podcast platforms later on. And all they do is they upload the exact same thing that went live on the radio, but they cut the music out, because obviously you can't have music in a podcast. And this is clearly working because they've been doing this for a couple of years now. It's clearly popular, and it's a great way of getting people listening to your show who maybe don't necessarily listen to the radio, or people who do listen to the radio but they miss the show, or maybe they just don't like the music. Maybe they like the host, they don't really like the host's taste in music. So you can also do both at the same time without neglecting one or the other. It's really easy to do this. All they've done, like I say, is taken out the music. And I guess another thing, Phil, is that it's important to note that in these sort of discussions, it always comes up that, podcast is doing really well, radio is dying, which we try and claim isn't the case, because all the figures, all the stats released by platforms like Radar and Nielsen all claim that this isn't true. Year on year, like in 2019, for example, Nielsen, in their Audio Today report, found that 92% of Americans are tuning in to radio weekly. That's a lot of people.
It's a heck of a lot of people. It's a massive country as well.
Very big.
All that's really changing is the habits, the ways people are listening, and the way platforms like such as ours and other forms of entertainment distributors or with smart speakers, smartphones, things like that. They just make radio so much more accessible. And when something is at the touch of a button, or not just at the touch of your voice at the tip of your tongue. You're shouting at your smart speaker devices to play it. If listening to something and doing something is as simple as it possibly can be, we're doing it more often. Like I personally listen to a lot of classic FM a lot at home, and I'll sort of just keep throughout the day asking, Alexa, play classic FM or things like that, and just because it is so easy, I can leave it on all day. Just because it's so accessible to me now.
Yeah, and I guess this goes on to the fact of like how online radio is sort of changing the game, really, because obviously back in the day things were very limited. You had to have a physical radio set or like radio in your car to listen to the radio, whereas nowadays you can have the radio wherever you go. As long as you've got a phone, a smart speaker, whatever it may be, you can listen to radio. And this is clearly working well with audiences as well, because as we're seeing at Radio.co, online radio is just going through strength and strength. It's growing in popularity every year.
And I guess a lot of that can be sort of just going back to what you mentioned earlier about what BBC Radio 1 do with turning their radio program into a podcast, is that that sort of programming, that sort of work that they're doing is helping both radio and podcasting remain popular, because you are you're reworking a radio program into something that is accessible to those that prefer to get their entertainment in an on-demand format. So so how I describe it to people is that when you're launching a radio station, you want to try and make it as available as possible in as many different formats as possible, because there are people who could absolutely love your radio station, but they only get their entertainment through Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Yeah. So how do you get those people? Well, you turn your radio station, your show, into an accessible format on those platforms by what Radio 1 do. They cut out all their music, they keep all the talking, the games, the banter, they keep that as a digestible podcast.
Yeah.
And likewise, again, there are audiences that might love it and they're only on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. So how do you appeal to them? Well, you turn some of your content into video format and things like that. So that's how they both complement each other very, very well. You are appealing to a larger range of audiences by making it appealing, attractive to those that want to listen to your content when it suits them. We can't all be available live. So if you can make a 4-hour breakfast show into an easily digestible 45-minute listen on a commute, that's going to grow your audiences, and vice versa as well. If you are making your radio show, your station, your brand available on demand, you are attracting people to think, oh, well, I might actually listen to the real thing. I might, they might convert them into radio listeners. So they work very, very well hand in hand.
100%. And I mean, I've used an app like BBC Sounds or Global Player before to listen to shows that I've missed, or just I've heard an advert for a show on another radio show. And I guess you don't need to see these two mediums as two separate entities anymore. You can really sort of dive into an app like BBC Sounds and treat it in the same way you might treat on-demand music like Spotify. It's kind of like you've got the live aspect and you've got the on-demand aspect. Similar to how I guess you've got a YouTube video and then a live YouTube video. They're just two sort of different ways of digesting audio content.
Yeah. Within radio, you have live program, you have pre-recorded program.
Of course,
I mean, a pre-recorded talk show, let's say, is essentially a podcast you're streaming as live, and a podcast is an on-demand version of a show. These both mediums sort of complement each other so well, but the reason why they're not really competing against each other, and why doesn't matter how popular podcasts are, it doesn't take anything away from radio, is because radio has got 100+ years behind it of recognition of the service that it provides. I always sort of say that radio isn't just merely an entertainment medium. It's a service. Because the purpose of a radio station, which again it has a specific purpose, is to potentially entertain, to inform, keep people together. It's a recognizable service. It's almost like a necessity. I mean, going back a few years during the height of the global pandemic, we had a lot of people using Radio.co to create just really small scale, hyper local radio stations for their community, even their street. We had a few stations literally just for a particular village or a street.
Oh, wow.
Specifically just to make sure that people were okay. They were informed of what the latest rule changes were. They were keeping each other company, and that's what radio provides, and it's always provided. It's a relationship with somebody. They come out of a music track. They ask if you're okay. I mean, they can't hear you yet. Will.i.am will say something about that. But yeah, it's that they're keeping this empathic sort of connection with you, and there's company in the corner of the room when your radio's on. They're informing, entertaining, all things like that. Podcast doesn't provide that. It's very much just you're listening to this in a format that suits you. You are pausing it. You are listening back to it. You are addressed as a huge unit, as in the sense of
huge unit.
Huge unit. It's probably not the best way of describing
One
it.
hell of a unit.
A collective, sorry, is what I should have said. So, you start listening to a podcast and it's all about hello everyone, or thanks to you all for listening. Radio's not like that. It's always, how are you doing? We're playing your favorite music. So because of that, that's why there is no competition, because people understand the importance and what makes radio so necessary, so essential. Podcasting is more built around convenience, if anything. So, yes.
So I'm just wondering, did you hear about these stations that came up during COVID for communities and stuff? Did you hear about them doing podcasts as well, or was it primarily just radio stations? Because obviously they serve two different purposes, and I guess radio, like you say, is more welcoming, whereas podcast can feel more lonely. So I guess that was less important for them.
Yeah, it was. There were some people who did try podcasting, mainly, as a way of just a pre-recorded program, rather than a podcast really, per se.
Yeah.
But it was a bit more, particularly in the context of those times, a bit more isolating for those. That's why they were just streaming something live, playing a bit of music, chatting in between, inviting people to give their opinions and questions and things.
Yeah.
But during that time, these incredibly hyper-local radio stations, understanding the value of radio, and they were very sort of short-lived, of course. They served a particular purpose. And
I guess on that, something I was going to go on to next was that a good thing about radio is it's very broad. Whereas podcasts can be more niche. So you see this a lot, actually. You see Radio X, for example, will have a broad radio station that just sort of produces the same kind of music for a big target audience. But then they might create podcasts separately to that, which are focused more on just one specific artist or something like that. And obviously that's a much more specific niche. But then I guess in this instance, you can't get more niche than what they were already doing on the radio. If you're not on that street, you're probably not going to be that interested, or maybe you would be interested, but you're not really going to get what they're talking about. So I guess radio can be just as niche.
Yeah, absolutely. Of advice I give sort of people for launching their station is, if you say that it doesn't matter that your internet radio station is available globally, you still want to make it local, because it means you can relate to your audience, and means you've got a target audience. So if we were we're based in Manchester. If we were launching a station for Manchester, we want to talk about events going on in Manchester. It doesn't matter if people on the other side of the world are listening. If they want to carry on listening, great, but I don't need to appeal to them because my content derives from the local area. I'm talking about local businesses, local people, funny stories in the news that have happened within this area. It helps me focus on the content that I'm creating and the audience that I'm speaking to. It makes me more relatable. Whilst podcasting is you still want to be niche with a podcast. It's a way that you again can focus yourself. So I'm not just going to do a movie podcast or a TV show podcast. I'm going to do something from a specific era, actor, theme. But you can still be sort of niche with radio, particularly from the local aspect. But the appeal of it is you could still be playing great music. It doesn't matter if you're talking about your hometown and I don't have absolutely no idea what it's going on about. I know that I like the personality that you have on the radio show. I like how you do come across as genuine, and the music that you play is a bonus. Podcasting, a niche podcast in particular, I feel like you have to really be into the topic that's being talked about in order for you to enjoy it. Because it is all talk, whereas radio, there can potentially be a bit of a break with music. So,
What about, so last week on the show, we sort of talked about how brands could get involved by starting podcasts, by starting radio stations. Is there room for big brands, smaller brands, little businesses to maybe have both as well? Or should they particularly focus on one or the other, do you think?
I guess it kind of it comes down to a preference of what the goal is that they want to achieve with this. I mean, audio is a fantastic tool to have in a brand's arsenal, because it's a way of injecting your brand and reminding people of your brand in a very easily digestible way. Something playing out some speakers or in your headphones and things like that. And I guess if you are an in-store brand and you want to have music playing throughout the day for people in your store, interjected with jingles, promos about offers you've got, or booking appointments, whatever it is you may be, that's a great way of making your customers, your audience, essentially feel more comfortable. They're not walking around a supermarket in silence. They're listening to something. They're enjoying their time while they're in your store. So having a radio station in that context is really, really great. It's very beneficial for those working in the store, or as much as or in the office and things. But also having a podcast, it's you are potentially an industry leader, an expert in a particular field. So you could be an office and you're providing music for the employees in the office, but the sort of industry that you specialize, it could be you specialize in marketing or business developing or e-commerce, or whatever it may be. And there are people who would be interested in hearing what you have to say. And if you can provide a 20, 30-minute program, that's usually the sweet spot for these kinds of programs, of you just talking about your experiences or talking with other experts. That's engaging content for people. And it just so happens, this is a podcast provided by HSBC or QuickFit or whatever it may be. It just so happens that this really engaging, expertly crafted a converse sort of, a program that you're doing with people on your team just so happens to be, these are all people that work for that particular retail chain. So, for bolstering your brand, podcasting is absolutely a fantastic way to go. But also, particularly for in-store, having a radio station for that is fundamental. I
guess it's important to sort of note as well that you don't necessarily have to have a 24/7 radio station. I guess there's this old view of radio that it's this 24-hour thing. It's constantly got different presenters every hour, different music, stuff like that. That's no longer the case. You can go live on just a select hour every week, or maybe you're live for like a couple of hours every day. You don't need to have a 24/7 ran station. You can have automated software running on. Radio.co obviously offers you to have a 24/7 station, but you can do very little to have that running. And then you could just go live for an hour and then the podcast goes live every day or something like that.
That's the beauty of internet radio in comparison to terrestrial FM is that there's no body like the FCC or Ofcom or something telling you that you have to do this kind of programming for X amount of time every single day. Internet radio is a bit like the Wild West. It's a bit lawless. So you can broadcast in whichever way you want. You could just broadcast for 1 hour a day and make that into a podcast. And we actually have people who are podcasters using our platform, and they're using it for usually one of two ways. Is either they are a podcast first and they will they want to have a 24/7 stream of all of their content, so it's just a new avenue people can go to listen to it, or they use our radio platform to broadcast a live podcast, which is then recorded, and then they have that maybe on looped until next week, and then next week there's another live program, and again that is in loop, so you can catch it every hour of the day. And similarly, going back to talking about in-store, is we have Next broadcasting with Radio.co, and how they use it is they're using it to entertain their distribution staff, their warehouse staff, and I think their schedule is based on, it's like 2 12-hour segments. So they've got like the same content repeated. So those in the morning, half a day, are listening to it once, then the latter day they listen to it again. But they have a team of people who create a show, a pre-recorded show, podcast. And it's just for a couple of hours a day. So a couple of hours a week, ultimately. And that's it. But they've created a 24-hour stream based off, a limited amount of actual original content. And, it's you have full creative freedom over how it's done.
And I guess like you've already said, the benefits of this is just the sort of interaction you get that you miss with a podcast. I guess it's similar to the way like a YouTuber uploads daily, but then they might do a live stream every so often and they can sort of like talk with their viewers and their subscribers and have a bit of interaction. And it kind of just builds up this sort of trust that you don't get from watching a YouTube video sat on your own in your bedroom or something like that. This is very similar. You obviously sort of grow. I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm friends with my podcast hosts, but they have no idea who I am. But then if they were to go and do a radio show and I got to actually like message in or something like that, I'd feel more involved and feel like I actually, maybe they are my friends.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always a thing that I say is more appealing for an audience if you are able to do live podcasts, also known as a live radio show. If you do them, because you are no longer asking people to get in touch and let me know next week what's going on or whatnot. You are actually asking people to get in touch live. And, I might have no intention whatsoever of actually sending someone an email or a text or trying to call in live. But I'm attracted by that there is an opportunity to do that. I'm more invested in listening to this live program, particularly if they're talking about topics, opinions, where I could potentially have the opportunity to share mine live on air. Regardless of whether I do or not, that doesn't matter. It's just a much more appealing listen that I could actually sort of literally get involved with it.
Hey, Phil, keep the tunes coming. As the kids say. I guess last thing to end on here with this is it's all well and good having a podcast, having a radio station, but obviously you can't necessarily do it for free. You need to sort of get something back from this. What are the sort of monetization aspects of this? Where could you potentially make some money from turning your radio show into a podcast and vice versa?
Yeah, well, it kind of works in two different ways, really, for obviously both radio and podcasting. So with radio, going back to a point we made earlier about having a local-based radio station, is, of course, you can appeal to local businesses and, local sponsors. And because you are actually doing relevant content to your audience, then you can be more relatable to these businesses. Because again, it doesn't matter if you've got a global audience, the thousands of people that could be potentially listening from the US or Australia, they're not really going to invest in this local bakery you've got down the road. But again, your local audience are going to be there, the one that's actually going to be helping this business. So, monetizing through them, offering, I guess, sort of more generous deals to these people, charge cheap to get loyalty. So you could charge someone a smaller amount to have them sponsor your breakfast show for the next 6 months or something like that. So it's still, I guess, radio is still very traditional in terms of its monetization is, creating ads, working out your own little business deals. But again, if you're more local focused, it can be a bit easier. It's not an easy thing to do, but it just means you've got a bit more focus with it. And podcasting, again, once you hit a certain threshold, you'll see these people who are always sort of sponsoring the same sorts of things. The old stereotypical joke of sponsoring mattresses and, mail order meal kits and things like that. And those sorts of things are more...
The latest VPN service.
Those are more sort of like just automated things based on podcast providers and their platforms and things, injecting ads in and stuff. But, it can certainly sort of help, again, if you've got presence on both radio and podcasting, the possibilities to monetize potentially both obviously just sort of grows better then.
Well, I guess as well, another thing is there's so many podcasts out there these days that it's hard to break through. And that's why we always say go for a niche. But I guess if you're looking for sponsors, another way of breaking through might be to say to them, hey, we also have a radio station. That's not something everyone is doing right now. It's still a relatively new thing. So if you say, hey, look, we've got a radio station and a podcast, that's obviously going to look a bit better to potential sponsors.
It's very weird to think that people are looking to radio as the new kid on the block. Every man and his dog's got a podcast, but it's funny, because radio's been around for forever. Another sort of way to monetize is kind of a bit like that, where you could have a radio station and you want to make some exclusive content, and you might not necessarily want to release these as public podcasts, but hey, you can use platforms like Patreon, and where you can have exclusive content there. So, hey, on this radio show, we're going to be having a 20-minute chat with Will.i.am, for example. He's coming to talk about his
William's on the show.
We're going to be talking about his latest terrible idea. But you've only got time in your schedule to maybe chat to him for 10 or 15 minutes on your radio show. However, you're going to be talking to him at at greater length, maybe as a downloadable podcast exclusive. You have to sign up to our Patreon page to get that. So there are other thinking outside the box ways where you can turn your radio content into potentially revenue earning on-demand content if you put it behind a paywall.
I guess another thing you could potentially do as well is every new episode of the podcast is recorded live. So maybe you start on the radio show itself, you record the podcast there, maybe you have a sponsor for that, and then that is the first way people can listen to the show. So you're enticing them to go and listen on the radio show, and then you edit that, maybe you take out the sponsor at the end, so that's like an exclusive sponsor, and then you put that into the podcast that everyone can just hear. Just little ways of incentivizing people to go to the radio show or go to the podcast, or both, and then that way one isn't forgotten in terms of sponsorship, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And kind of what you're describing there, Rowan, is multi-platform use content.
Ooh,
things like that. I don't know if that's an official term. It's just how I've described it. But yeah, it's taking stuff that you've done already and just recycling it, reusing it for different purposes. So taking a live show that you did that you happen to record, chopping it up into little bits and making it as exclusive content behind a paywall or video content for YouTube and TikTok and things like that. So, it's often people think, if you're doing both a radio and a podcast, that's double the amount of work. Absolutely not.
No.
Your podcast could just be offcuts of your radio station, and vice versa. Your podcast could be made up of segments from your radio show. It's going to take you a bit of time to upload these things and maybe just optimize them a little bit for those platforms you're using, but you're not creating new content.
No, it would take a lot longer to do a whole of a show. And like you say, this is also something we talk about quite regularly, and that is to always remember to include a video aspect, even though it always seems a bit counterintuitive when you're focusing on audio content. But video will always be helpful in the long term when you're trying to promote your show on stuff like TikTok and YouTube. Basically just because it's just more visually interesting for newcomers to put a face to the voice, or maybe just have more of a sort of, I don't know, when you're watching TikTok, you don't just want to watch like an audio graph going up and down. You want to see something, and that will always grab people's attention more. So yeah, if you can, try and include a video aspect as well. I know this might seem like, oh God, now I need to do a podcast, a radio show and a video, but in the long term, it will save you time because you're not having to produce extra content for TikTok, for example, to get people to come to your show.
I mean, as an example, obviously we're pre-recording this. This isn't live, but we are recording it as video. We're recording it as audio.
Yeah.
So the three ways we could do this is we can release it as video content. We're releasing it purely as audio content, but we could also upload it to a platform like radio.co and schedule it as if it's a live streamed program and stuff. So that's just off one recording, we've got three ways at least that this can be.
This will get snipped up and put onto social media as well. So I guess that's 4 ways.
Yeah, exactly. So it takes a little bit of time, I say, to optimize things like that. But yeah, you're making your one piece of content accessible in at least 4 different ways, just off this one recording. And
expanding your reach in doing so, because like you say, some people are very much like, oh, I only use TikTok. So they're then going to find your content, or someone who's like, oh, I only use Spotify, I hate social media. There you go. They've also found your show. So yeah, a lot to think about there. Interesting stuff. And
but I say ultimately, all that is, we've just talked about the benefits of both. They are not competing against each other.
No, we've not used one negative, I don't think, that whole time for either of them.
I think the only slight negative is that sometimes it can take a bit more effort to do things.
Yeah, of course.
I said absolutely not. The pros massively outweigh the cons of doing that. So yeah, that's why you should consider having both a radio and a podcast, because you're not losing one audience. The people who listen to you in a live radio format are going to continue doing that because that's how they prefer their content.
Yeah.
People who want to listen to you on demand are going to continue listening to you that way. They may flick in between the two, but there's no harm in having both because, as we just discussed, they're so complementary.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, interesting stuff. If you'd like to know more about this, how you can start a radio station, radio.co. That's where we suggest you go. Take a look at Radio.co. You can get a 7-day free trial on there. And you could also book a demo, couldn't you, Phil? And
certainly.
meet the man himself, the man of the hour, Mr. Phil Dean.
Certainly. And send us an email, studio@radio.co, if you've got any questions. Doesn't even have to be about the radio.co platform. If you've just got a bit of advice, bit of guidance that you want about podcasting. We've also recently launched our radio.co audio university, our training. So again, if you have an existing online radio station or you're looking to launch a new one and you want 60 minutes to have a little chat about how to take your idea, your acorn if you will, and grow it into something that's actually going to start generating listeners and potentially revenue in the future, we're here to help with all of that. So again, studio@radio.co, and we'll help you with that as well.
Awesome. Sounds good. Right, it's time to move on to item 2 on today's show. And it feels like we're talking about AI every week at the moment, but it's another AI thing. This time involving Will.i.am, of all people. So if you don't know, Will.i.am is originally from the band The Black Eyed Peas. He's done various things over the years. I believe he was a host on, is it The Voice? Is that the one where
still
you
is,
press a button? He's still is. Press a button, you spin around that. That's that one. The big chairs. But he's also a bit of a tech innovator, apparently.
A self-appointed tech innovator.
This is something I didn't know about until you sent me this article, and I was like, is he? Okay, cool. I don't know if you want to sort of describe what's going on here, Phil, because I feel like you know more about this than me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know too much because anything AI kind of just goes over my head, really. So this is something that he announced actually a couple of months ago, so back in August, but he's been doing a lot more press with it sort of in the last sort of couple of weeks.
Right.
And basically, I say Will.i.am, self-appointed tech innovator, likes to try and find ways to make things unnecessarily more complicated or things that only work specifically for him and don't really have any practical use. Often garish sort of things. His latest garish sort of monstrosity is a thing called Radio.
That's RAIDIO.
Yeah, so getting AI in radio there. So radio.fyi.
I wonder how you actually meant to pronounce it, because I hope it is like that.
Radio. It's like the thing off Jurassic Park, dinosaurs. That's how I kind of say. But it's basically an AI-powered platform that transforms traditional radio into an interactive conversational experience.
Wow.
So the actual service, the product, but Rowan will go into a bit more about this because he's actually sort of given it a little go. It's about as vague as that, really. This is just a way where he feels like, radio's not quite as creepy enough as it is. Let's kind of add an extra step to it. So, his company, FYI.ai, far too many letters. It describes itself as a communication platform designed to serve the creative community. So that's who this product is for, really.
Right.
And the main hook, the USP of his RADIO.FYI.
So many letters.
The USP of it is that it gives two-way communication in the sense that, it's great that a radio DJ is asking how you're doing, but you can respond and the host is going to go, oh, yeah, thanks, Phil, for that. Yeah, how you doing? So the way he's innovated radio, in his mind, is that there isn't enough conversation.
No.
So
there's not enough interruption.
That's exactly it. Radio isn't interrupted enough for my liking. If I want a conversation, I'm going to talk with an AI-generated radio rather than pick up the phone and talk to a friend.
Yeah.
So at any point, you can press a button to speak with the AI persona about whatever comes to mind.
Yeah.
And they'll just talk to everyone's got their own unique experience because they might all be using the same platform, but they're feeding off different information you've uploaded to it. You can have a conversation as long as your arm, and play music sort of whenever you like. It's that. It's having a chat with a DJ live on air.
Yeah. I guess we've literally just spoken about how radio can be great for adding the more personal approach. You can speak to the host. You can have that sort of listener to host interactions. I guess the difference is that an actual radio show has a producer in the middle who sort of picks out who's going to talk on air, or the messages or something like that. Or maybe the host will go through a selection of WhatsApps that's been sent in and pick the best ones. They're not just letting any old schmuck phone in and just take the reins whenever they want, because that would be absolute chaos.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing that came to my mind when I read this. I was like, okay, sure, fine. Do we need this?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that this platform has that I don't think any radio host, any radio station on earth can actually provide is that apparently each station is fundamentally interactive, and you'll be welcomed by name by this AI host, apparently live from the ether.
Yes.
I don't think any radio station is currently hosted within the ether.
No.
Within the nether realm.
I don't think they've got very good Wi-Fi connection in the ether.
It's got that going for it. This sort of mystical, ghost-like host.
So I gave this a go earlier on. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can now see what the app actually looks like. And the first thing that struck me was it's not laid out particularly well. I'm not entirely sure what the difference is between chat, AI, and projects. Now, projects are, from what I understand, are your radio stations, because you can also, they have a select few radio stations you can just like find, like here, for example, you got sports, pop culture, and you can click on these and listen to these, or you can create your own. Is that right?
How it's described is, each radio station that you have is a project. So you are, I guess, actively uploading content, feeding it information based on what you might want to talk about.
And you can share this with other people, right?
Yeah, so. and you can kind of collab and create your own radio station, essentially. But then I feel like, what's the point of that? I mean, I know, like I said, our platform allows you to create a radio station with the purpose of, maybe having a bit of fun with it and earning a revenue off it, maybe, or sharing it with people, providing a service, as we mentioned. This seems to be a bit of a backward step in the sense of you are creating your own thing, what to then just listen to it yourself.
Pretty much.
It's no different that really, I guess, to Spotify's AI DJ and things where, it's creating a playlist, something's chatting to you. This just seems like you're going to some lengths to awkwardly create your own radio station in a way that really isn't any fun.
No, and I guess, I don't like Spotify DJ, but at least you don't have to do much. It's just sort of there, and it knows what music you like, and it's going to give you sort of what you want. Whereas this, you're having to go to the effort of creating your own project, AI, whatever you want to call it, and sort of feed it information.
Yeah, and you might as well just write your own scripts and just
do it yourself.
Just do a radio station yourself. It seems to be a heck of a lot easier to do that than whatever this is.
Now, apparently there's also location-based personalization, and when I first signed up, it was very keen to give it my contacts, which I said no immediately. It also wanted like a lot of information about me, a lot more information than I was expecting for something that just is essentially a radio app. And also, I always get a bit suspicious of these AI apps when I download them. I'm always like, what is this? It just looks dodgy. But yeah, there's like, you can just listen to a sort of generic station, or I gave pop culture a go. And interestingly, the actual AI voice isn't great. It can't actually pronounce AI, which I found quite interesting. It just sort of says A. I don't know how I feel about this. Personally, I'm like, I will never use this. I would never think.
What's the name of the app if anyone wants to kind of give it a go?
It's FYI. That's it. Just type in FYI. If you try and go out on the web, it will just take you to download the app. So there isn't currently a web version available. But yeah, I guess, I don't know. Is there a place for this, do you think? Or are we being a bit harsh?
No, I think it's for people. The issue I have with someone like Will.i.am, especially someone who he's massively in the pop culture, he's been around for a while and stuff, and he's comes across as a genuinely sort of a nice guy. But he comes across as a bit of a tech nerd and stuff. So he's got a big fan base, a lot of people who've got a lot of time for him, and that's why he can get away with doing these sort of just this gubbins he seems to sort of release a lot, whether it's a smartwatch that doesn't work. There was a video of him years ago where did he release his own smartphone or smartwatch or something, and he's showing people how it works, and he can't get it to work. And it's really embarrassing, and he kind of just stops and then kind of leaves it. We'll try and find it.
He just leaves.
It's really awkward because he's trying to show how good this is, and it just really doesn't work. And the problem with him is because he's got this big sort of fan base. They're not necessarily gullible and stuff, but they are people who he's appealing to people that have got no idea really about this industry that he's and this tech that he's selling them on. So people who will absolutely eat something up like this are people like, obviously AI enthusiasts, but also people who don't really understand how radio works or know that there are platforms like radio.co where you can do this in a more authentic way.
Yeah. Or people that seem to think radio is in need of dire innovation, which it isn't. As it currently stands, radio has innovated enough over the past few years. It doesn't really need another big step like this, I guess.
There was an interview he did a couple of weeks ago. I forget who with, and he's talking in the first sort of few minutes. He's talking about how radio has not been innovated since satellite. And he makes an opinion of that. I've realised that car manufacturers, millions of cars being developed every day, every week, and that they all have radio built into them. And I'm like thinking, wow, something needs to be done about that. And it's like, but everyone in the industry knows that.
Yeah.
Everyone who works within, not even just radio, just entertainment in general, knows that's the case. Knows that it doesn't matter how luxurious your supercar is. One of the first things car manufacturers are thinking about is how good, how compatible, how user-friendly can we make the sound system. It doesn't matter if it's radio, how well can it connect to Spotify and things like that, because they understand the importance of having radio in a car. And that's not new information. That's just common sense. But he's addressing it like he's some sort of like guru who's found this out. And the people that are fans of him will eat this up and go, oh my God, he's right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, what a genius. And he's not. He's just someone who, again, is a bit of a tech nerd, and he's got a platform to millions of people who will eat it up. So that's kind of who this is for. I think people who don't really understand the industry are big fans of him and are big on AI and kind of want to do this as a bit of an experimental fad.
Well, I guess we're seeing this in all avenues of the arts at the moment, is that there's these tech innovators coming in. There's a new AI every day. They're coming in, they're like, wow, this is going to change the game. Like, no one needs to worry about acting anymore because there's an AI that can do, I don't know, it can be an actor in any film. And it's like, yeah, it can. Should it? Probably not. And I just want to, so currently it's showing me just the logo, and now it's going to go back to the host, and it gives you these sort of like generic images at the top, which is like, it just sort of goes through. And so let me just show you how it works if you want to interrupt. So currently the host is talking. So if I just press the mic button, I'll turn the volume up for this.
Dropping under galactic.
Hello, it's me, Rowan. So
Good morning, Cat Rowan. It's awesome to hear from you. You're tuned into FYI Dar Radio, and it's already shaping up to be a fantastic Wednesday morning.
So that was pretty quick. Earlier on, it took ages to like actually reply to me. So what if I now just say the same thing again? Will it know I've already said that once, or will it just give me that response again?
We were just.
Hello, I'm Rowan.
Good morning, Rowan and Yuan. You're tuned into FYI.
Who's Yuan?
It's already shaping up to be a fantastic Wednesday morning. We've been deep diving into Lil Tecca's triumphant Plan A album, which continues to soar on the charts.
Tell me more.
Hey, how's it, Rowan? Thanks for tuning in. Let's dive deeper into Lil Tecca's latest album.
What happened there?
Thanks, Ro. Let's carry on. Let's go back to what we were talking about before.
It's like she's getting progressively more annoyed I keep interrupting.
Yeah. Thanks. Anyway,
Yeah, all right. Cheers, Rowan. Thank you.
I mean, we don't want to knock it completely. It's very, very early days.
It's very clever. It's clever stuff.
Yeah, I think the app's been around for a couple of months or so. You know, things, I guess, the AI voice and the interaction, the features will improve. It'll get better. But
there's also like, seems to be a thing that most AI apps do, but there's also like, there's an image generator on there. There's a translator. I don't know why this seems to be a thing, but if you download an AI app, it seems to do pretty much everything you could possibly want, even though this one is specifically about radio. So it's not even just like, if you don't like the radio aspect, then I guess there's other things you can do on it maybe. But like we say, it's about creating a radio station, sharing it with your friends. I don't know. What do you think you'll give this a go?
Absolutely not. No, I said it's far more worthwhile, far more beneficial, and much more fun just to create your own. And, not to keep harping on about radio.co, but that's what you can do is actually it's creating actual radio, which seems to require far less effort and stress and probably money, I bet, than doing it through this particular app.
Yeah, I mean, as well. I personally wouldn't use this. I've given it a go. And that's the thing that these sort of platforms come down to. It's very clever, and it's all well and good saying, "Look at this amazing thing we've created," but if people don't use it, then is it gonna carry on? No, it's a no from me, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Radio and podcasting, they work well. Radio and AI can work well, but it's not going to substitute it.
I think it'd probably be stupid of us to say that there's no chance that AI is going to have its fingers in radio in the future, because as much as me and you hate it, it's popping up all over the place, and it's only going to get better. But I personally don't see a way that this will ever replace like actual people, because at the end of the day, what's the main reason you have a favorite radio show? It might be the music, but that music is picked out by a host, and you probably enjoy listening to the host. So yeah, I don't know, not for me.
Far too many people are involved in the things that you like about radio.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So that's that. Sorry, William, we shan't be using it. So that is it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed the show, then make sure to click subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to click like, and also leave a comment if you want. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what you think about the show and ways we can improve. And again, if you're on podcasty platforms like Spotify, then why not leave us a review? It's very helpful for us, and we genuinely do read them. So that'd be great. But until next time, thank you very much for watching, and thanks Phil for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
See you later.